Blog post 10. Date, March the 4th. Followers, 71. Hi guys, thanks for the messages. I know you want an update and I feel like I need a bit of a distraction. So I'm going to use the time to answer a few more of your questions. Do you have a soul? Okay, pretty deep one to start with there. So let me ask you this. Do you? I'm not trying to be facetious or anything. It's a genuine question. I assumed I had one when I was alive, and given the fact that I love my family and friends just as much as I did then, if not more, I assume I still have one now. Will that do for you? Do you brush your teeth/fangs? Good question. The answer is yes, but I don't have to. According to Mum's experiments, one of the reasons we stay so perfect is that bacteria and microbes can't exist on or in our bodies, meaning we can't decay or rot. That also means that bacteria can't grow on my teeth and give me foul breath. However, out of habit, I do still clean them, though I'll admit, I skip a day or two now and then. Can you type super fast? Another interesting one, and once again, the answer is yes, I can. Now, for the sake of research, and because my mum's influence has obviously rubbed off on me far more than I thought, I did a quick online search, which told me the average speed is 40 words per minute. Then I checked mine, which came out at 200, actually 199, but I feel like I should be able to round it up. Some of the words were pretty long. So that puts me about 5 times the speed of an average person, which is cool, right? That's why I'm able to bash out these blog posts so quickly, particularly the short ones. It might also be a bit of a bonus if I ever decide I could cope with the idea of carrying on my education and had to write essays again. The only downside is the stress it puts on my computer, keyboard and mobile. I've already ordered a new industrial strength screen for this phone as hairline cracks have started to appear in the glass. But you win some, you lose some. I can't complain. Do vampires have a reflection? Yes, I do. Apparently, the myth of vampires lacking reflections was something to do with the silver backing on old mirrors and us being soulless. See previous answer. I don't know if that's true, the first bit, but I do know I can still see my face every morning when I needlessly brush my teeth. Do you poo? Seriously? Is this the level of maturity that we're at on this blog? Although I suppose it's a reasonable question to ask, and the answer is no. I do not. While the blood travels through my digestive system, it is entirely absorbed within the alimentary canal. Look how sciencey I sounded there. Mum told me that though. Sorry if you were starting to think I was super smart. I assure you, I'm not. So, as I mentioned before, we need all the water as we don't respire, so everything goes straight into my system. All the water from the blood, the iron, the platelets, the hormones, no waste whatsoever. It's pretty efficient, even if I do say so myself. So, put succinctly, no, I don't poo. Can you survive underwater? Interesting. I don't actually know the answer. I would think not, but I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to ask Mum to do a test on this one. I think this would go beyond a lot of ethical boundaries. You'll have to find another vampire to answer that one for you. Sorry. Can I survive without air? Yes, I can. But, and it's a big but, I can't speak without it. Humans make sounds by passing air over their vocal cords. So if there's no air going in and out, that's not possible. I guess it might explain why so many vampires in films have husky voices, though. Just a thought. Can vampires grow limbs back? At this point, I would just like to say that I am incredibly grateful that my mother is the one in charge of experiments and not you. Honestly, you think we'd test something like that? I have no idea, but I'll admit, it would be kind of cool if we could. Gecko girl. I like that idea. This is clearly bullshit. I looked up Professor David Colt and he doesn't exist. Less of a question, more of a challenge. LOL. Despite not really expecting anyone to read these posts, right from the start, I did consider that I should be a little circumspect with my identity. You never know. One of you might have yourselves pegged as the next Buffy the Vampire Slayer or be a descendant of Van Helsing. So, for your information, I have used real first names, just because I'm not sure I could keep fake ones straight in my head, but some places and all surnames are made up, starting with mine, Colt. Bonus point to any followers who can figure out why I chose it. Hopefully that will satisfy your doubts, but if not, I don't really care. Doesn't your family drive you mad? Why don't you just leave? This question made me laugh, probably more than it should have. Of course, some days they drive me nuts. And some days I just get bored. I wish I could go outside and feel the heat of sun on my face without lashings of sunscreen blocking it. But that's not possible, so I make do. I think the other reason I'm so okay with it is because of how long I was sick and how tough that was. Honestly, it's hard to know which was more stressful for my family, the cancer or the vampirism. And that might sound ridiculous to someone who's not been through it, but that's the truth. There was so much doubt back then, so many unspoken worries. Now it's not quite like that. Yes, I'm dead, but we know that. And Mum's doing what she can to make it as easy as possible. Oh, okay, Glenn's coming up. I'll catch you later. Blog post 11. Date, March the 5th. Followers 79. I'm sorry. I know I said I was going to fill you in yesterday, but honestly, it all got a bit too much. When I got in the car, I gave myself a massive dose of tranquilizer, just so I could block it all out for a while. I know, it's probably not a healthy way of dealing with my issues, but right then I couldn't care less about that. I wasn't the priority. Dad was. The time at the hospital was intense. Mum didn't want us to come. In fact, she pretty much insisted that we didn't. But she should have had more sense than to think we'd listen to her on something like this. No matter how terrified I was. We arrived at midday. I was coated head to toe in SPF and was wearing a hoodie, jeans and a face mask, all to try to limit my exposure to the sun. It works well enough if it's not midday in the middle of summer. That said, I can still feel the effects. It's kind of like a tingle, but bearable. The smells, on the other hand, were an entirely different matter. The moment we stepped through the doors, the scent of the blood was so strong, so intense, it was almost overwhelming. You don't have to come in, Glenn said, taking my hand and squeezing it. You can wait in the car. I can call you when I'm in there. I shook my head, swallowing the saliva that was building up in my mouth and feeling the tingle in my fangs as they longed to be released. When we took the lift, the scents died down by a fraction, but that didn't do anything to help alleviate my nerves. We walked through A&E. That's emergency room for those of you in the US. And I sensed straight away that at least 6 people in there had open wounds. I didn't need to see them to know. One was barely in his teens. Yeah, I can tell that just from their smell. And I could pick out a vegan in a taste test any day of the week. You've got this, Glenn said. Lock in on me, okay? I'm the only person here you need to think about. This was a bad idea, I said, voicing the thought that had been growing since we first entered the building. We won't stay for long. Just check he's okay. See if there's anything Mum needs. I promise I'll get you out of here as soon as I can. Did she not tell you anything? Did she not say what was wrong with him at all? I don't know any more than you do. I'm sure it'll be okay. She would have said on the phone if it was really bad. She'd have told us to come straight in. I clung desperately to Glenn's hand and forced myself to breathe in and out loud enough to give me something else to focus on. As Glenn gave the nurse our dad's number, I pressed myself close to him, only moving after I heard the room number and directions. This one, I said, as we reached one of the many nondescript rooms along the corridor. No one was speaking inside, but that didn't matter. I'd know my parents' aroma anywhere. Glenn nodded, and we pushed the door open. I don't know what I was expecting, but it's fair to say that the scene we were faced with was pretty much a nightmare for me. Mum was sitting in a tub chair, reading her book, while my dad was on a bed propped upright on a load of pillows. A newspaper was open on his lap, but his head was tilted to the side and his eyes were closed. But most distressing was the cannula in his arm, hooked up to a blood bag. "What happened?" Glenn asked, releasing my hand and going up to him. I remained frozen in the doorway. The smell hadn't yet registered with me. All I could focus on was my father and what the hell was wrong with him. "Merwin? Glenn? What on earth are you doing here? I told you not to come." "You can't tell us Dad's been taken to hospital and then tell us to keep away," Glenn said, marching into the room. Dad's heart thudded as it pumped someone else's blood around his body. "What's wrong with him?" I said, when I finally managed to speak, though it came out as barely a whisper. While I continued to stare, Glenn moved over to Mum, leaned down and wrapped his arms around her. "We won't stay long," he told her. "We just wanted to check you were okay." "What's wrong with him?" I asked again, my voice becoming slightly more strained. This time, my mother answered. "It's not as bad as it looks, honestly. He's just a bit tired, that's all." "You don't give someone a blood transfusion for being a bit tired, Mother," I snapped. "No, you're right." She finally closed her book and stood up. "But I promise you, it's not all that bad. Your father's been feeling quite tired recently, as you know, and yesterday, well, he fainted, and I had a bit of difficulty waking him up." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" I snapped again, and Glenn silenced me with a look. "They've run some tests, and it turns out he's suffering from anemia." "Anemia?" As a vampire with a mother who's a doctor, the possibility of anemia is something you don't ignore. Mum, Glenn and Dad are all on high-dosage iron tablets, given that they all regularly contribute to my stockpile of blood. "It can be controlled," she tried to reassure me, "now that we know what the problem is. He's going to need regular blood transfusions to help his body get back on track." "Regular? It's fine. It's standard procedure." A but hovered in the air. I didn't want to be the one to ask. I really didn't. Still, it came out anyway. "What are you not telling us, Mum?" Her lips twisted, and her cheeks drew in as her eyes avoided Glenn and me. In the end, they settled on Dad, who was stirring. "Mum," I said more firmly. She turned her head slowly away from Dad and looked at me. Tears were glazing her eyes, ready to fall, and I knew exactly what was coming next. "It means he can't donate blood for you anymore, Merwin." Blog post 12. Date, March the 5th. Followers, 89. So, as many of you realise, I am now back exactly where I started 48 hours ago, with too few blood donors to sustain me long term. I've gained Lavisa, and I've lost Dad. It's shit. Really shit. We left the hospital soon after speaking to Mum, although Glenn did do a vending machine run first to grab her a coffee and a chocolate bar. Then, like I said, I tranquilised myself for the journey home, just so I didn't have to look at Glenn and feel any more guilt for how much I am screwing with my family's lives. I mean, let's be honest. No one else is going to say it, so I will. I caused my dad to be in this state. Constantly needing him to donate blood is bound to be why this happened, even though Mum and Glenn will both insist it wasn't. And what if the same happens to them, or Lavisa? Is everyone supposed to put their lives at risk for me? I can't think about it right now. It's just all too much. Blog post 13. Date, March the 6th. Followers, 98. I'm sorry about how short that last post was. I couldn't bear to think about it. I was going to tranquilise myself again after I got home from the hospital, but then I remembered that the sedatives are another thing Mum gets hold of through her job. I've no idea how that's going to work now. Not that I use them often these days. Or at least, I didn't. Something about the current state of play has me thinking I might need them more in the coming weeks. It's all so freaking shit. And I don't just mean my dad. I mean the entire situation. Like, why would a vampire change me and not stick around for a bit? They could have at least told me where the fuck I could get a decent blood supply from so that I didn't end up draining my parents to the point where one of them has to have freaking blood transfusions. What kind of person does that? I don't care if they're not human anymore. I'm not human anymore, and I don't use it as a free pass to be a fucking asshole. Okay. Breathe, Merwin. I am not going back down that route again. I got stressed enough yesterday. The whole point of me writing this was so that I could process it and stop being so frustrated and angry. Like I said, the last couple of days haven't been great. Understatement of the year. Basically, take all the emotion you just read about, multiply it by 1,000 and you'll have a fraction of what I was feeling. At one point, I took this little brass paperweight that I've had since I was like 7 and threw it out the window. I know, it wasn't exactly a mature response, and I have no idea how far I can actually throw things. It could have gone off our farm altogether and hit some random dog walker miles away. Not sure how the police would deal with a death like that. As it is, I think I heard it hit one of the barns on the edge of our property, although that could have been my imagination. On the plus side, they're next to the woods, and I don't think they've been used for at least 50 years. Anyway, Mum has gone to pick Dad up from the hospital, and as I need a distraction and you have more questions, I thought I would take some time to answer them. It's not like I've got anything else to do. What type of blood tastes best? Ah, yes, the taste of blood. Given my comment about DB versus blood bags, I shouldn't really be surprised that you guys wanted an answer to this. Interestingly, what food a person eats can heavily affect how their blood tastes, as do other things like whether they smoke or drink alcohol. Protein shakes makes it utterly disgusting, and yes, most old people do have a tang of boiled vegetables, but I don't think that's really their fault. You might be surprised to find out that the most flavourful form of human blood is, in my opinion, from vegans. There's something so utterly pure about it. That probably sounds a bit cliched, but it's true. It just doesn't taste contaminated. Another interesting fact is that the chemicals and hormones present also transfer to me. Things like adrenaline and cortisol are often high in first-time blood donors and can generally leave me twitchy for a few days. While endorphins are generally lacking, when they are there, they taste amazing and chill me out in a way that tranquilizers could never do. High levels of testosterone do all sorts of weird things to me. Just don't ask. What does Lavisa do? So, bit of change in direction here, but I get it. It was me talking about her amazing penthouse split-level apartment with the views over London, wasn't it? I mean, that place is worth big bucks. Seriously, big bucks. Now, as for what she does for a living, it's something to do with investment banking. She's tried to explain it to me, but it doesn't sound all that interesting if I'm honest. Anyway, through some useful family connections and with a bit of luck thrown in, she and Jamie are sitting pretty. Now, back to vampire-related questions. Why don't you drink animal blood? Okay, I'm fairly sure you've got the measure of my mother well enough by now to realise that, obviously, we have tested this. Yes, this topic has been thoroughly researched by trying different types and hoping it wouldn't kill me. Okay, so that's a little dramatic, but there were days when I wondered exactly how far she would push it in the name of science. Anyway, The answer is yes, I can drink animal blood, and it would keep me alive, probably. But it doesn't do me much good. In fact, I get pretty sick. I think I could go a couple of months on it, but I'm not exactly sure what happens after that. I guess if we don't find a solution to my blood shortage, then I might. Oh, sorry guys. Mum and Dad's car's just pulled up. I've got to go. I'll post this now and promise I'll get back to you later and fill you in on everything. Take care. XOXO, Vampire Girl. Made me laugh anyway. You've been listening to Life Sucks, Bloodsucker's blog, Book 1. Make sure you hit subscribe so you do not miss when the next post goes live. Bloodsucker's blog is written by Ella Stone, narrated by Hannah Lynn, and produced by Ella Stone.